Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Today, we have a special episode. We have a freight agent interview from a past Freight Broker Bootcamp student. And the topic here is, how to make six figures working from home without getting your freight broker authority, right? So we're talking to an agent today. I'm going to introduce him here in a minute. Let's let everybody get live. We're going to chat for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to bring him up, and that's what we're going to talk about today. A lot of people really enjoy the interviews. I've done lots of interviews. You guys can check them out on my Freight Broker Bootcamp YouTube channel. If my voice sounds a little froggy, a little hoarse, it is. I'm getting over head cold, chest cold. Thankfully, I think I'm on the tail end of it. I think by the end of this week, we should be good to go. But I didn't want to miss another week. But I do apologize for not being able to be here last week because I did have to cancel. You did not want to hear me last week. I would have been barking in your ear, and my voice was even worse. So forgive me if I have to clear my throat a little bit today. Forgive me if I have to cough. But I do thank you for being here. I'm excited because I love these interviews. This is, these types of interviews and this type of feedback from my students and my audience is the type of feedback that any teacher, coach, trainer is looking for, right? It's the feedback that says what we're doing is having an impact. What we're doing is working. What we're doing is helping others, right? And that's really what this is all about. So I am going to do a few shout outs while people are getting live here. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'm in Buffalo, New York. Hit me up. Let me know where you're at. I'll try to do a couple shout outs. Then we're going to jump. Here's the agenda. We're going to do some quick shout outs. We're going to start the interview. Then we're going to do a quick giveaway. Then we're going to do live Q&A. So stick around to the end because we're going to do live Q&A. All right. And not only will you be able to ask me questions, but you'll be able to ask my guest questions, which is probably way more interesting and fun for you. So we've got, we got a bunch of people. Okay, cool. We have Jomo Mighty in from Fort Lauderdale. Welcome. Golden Heart from Memphis, Tennessee. Jason Miller from Nocona, Texas. Troy Pratt from Lubbock, Texas. Noah from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Mimi from Houston, Texas. Pastor Lee from Greenville, Mississippi. Kevin Perry from Raleigh, North Carolina. DDR Quality Brokerage from Arkansas. Ozan from Lincoln, Nebraska. As always, Ozan's in here live. Abu Adodo from Houston. Laden from Phoenix, Arizona. I can hardly read these. Maybe it's my eyes are going bad. Man, I must be getting old. Leah from Atlanta, Georgia. Marie from Rhode Island. Christina from New Braunfels, Texas. Maria McCarthy from Wisconsin. All right, listen, if I didn't get to you with a shout out, I'm sorry, maybe next week, but I do want to get to the interview, okay? So today, again, if you guys missed it, we're going to talk about how my guest, who is a freight agent, went through my program, Freight Broker Bootcamp, and then started his own freight agency and is now making six figures working from home from Canada, right? So he's got a really cool story. We're going to dive into it. So let me do a quick intro here. All right. So this is my guest, Mohsin Sheikh. Is that correct?
That is correct, Dennis.
Mohsin Sheikh.
Hi,
All
Dennis.
right. Very good. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited that you're here. Give everybody a quick 60-second intro into you. Tell us a little bit about you. You're a freight agent, where you live, and a little bit of that story.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Mohsin Sheikh. I got acquainted to logistics and being a freight agent back in Ukraine, where I was actually studying. I'm actually from India, by the way, and I was studying in Ukraine back in 2019, and that's where I got a part-time job as a student, as a cold caller, and it was a freight brokerage company. And I hated that job. I really didn't like it. It was very depressing, but I somehow survived there for a few months, and I finally left the job. But that is the point where I realized that this might be something, that I could scale up on and I could work on. And I tried to find some sources, and I ended up coming across the Freight Broker Bootcamp. I started from the YouTube videos, and I got really interested in that. And so that's how I went on, and I started as an agent in October of 2020. And here I am now with Dennis.
Okay, awesome. So originally you were born and raised in India.
Yeah.
You moved to the Ukraine as a student. That was your first
Right.
experience with the freight brokerage business, right? You started doing cold calls. It wasn't very fun. You
Yeah.
moved on, migrated to Canada. Now you live in Canada.
True.
And you're also a student. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
yes.
So talk to us about that. Are you a full-time student, part-time student? What are you studying?
I'm studying business management. I'm a full-time student, and I'm also doing freight brokerage as an agent.
So you heard it correctly, people. He's a full-time student, which means he's probably doing 15 credits or more, right? I mean, credit hours, he's got probably 4 or 5 classes per semester, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And he's also an agent. Now, tell us, just to kind of tease everybody along here, in February, the last month, it's actually in January. I'm sorry, it's February now. In January, tell us what your numbers were as an agent: gross sales, gross profit.
In revenue, it was 120,000, and we did around 18,500, or approximately, in gross profit.
And then you as an agent, what's your commission split?
It's 70%.
70%. So
yes.
It's pretty easy math, people. 70% of 18,000, if I'm not mistaken, that's probably around 13 grand.
Yeah.
So I would dare to say that you are probably the only student in your entire school, let alone the business management program, that has a business that he's already running, that he's making, that he just made roughly estimate $13,000 a month in profit from. Okay. So number one, congrats to you. I mean, that's amazing. I say that because it's hard enough to run a business, right? Especially a startup, right? A young business. It's hard enough to be a full-time student, but it's really hard to do both and do them both well, right? So, I mean, I don't want to overlook that. That's very important. It's the first. I think that's the first I've ever had a student who was running a business while still a student. I've had them, they were still driving truck, or they were still had another job of some sort, but I think it's a first time student wise. So congrats on that. So when did you launch your brokerage?
So I started as a freight agent with a brokerage company back in October 2020. So initially, of course, I didn't have any customers. I did have the skills and knowledge of how to get customers, because I used to work. I did that part-time job as a cold caller.
Right.
And that's where I started. I did remember some of the contacts that I might have made some positive contacts with, and I started with them. And I remember the first month, which was October of 2020, I made $630 in profit. So
$630 in profit.
$630 in profit. And for some reason, I thought, like, okay, this sounds good. This can work out. So yeah, that was the first month. And because I was still studying, and I am still studying at the moment as well, it wasn't really easy to do both the things at once. But because I was still in Ukraine at that time, I used to study in the morning, and I used to do this from evening to midnight, because we have a time difference between the US and Ukraine. So it somehow worked out that way. And then I moved to Canada in 2021, and the time difference went away for some reasons, and I couldn't really manage my studies and work at once. So that is when I decided to hire people. And at the moment, I have 2 employees who work for me. They work remotely from India, and I personally trained them online. Of course, I trained them online. I taught them what they need to know, how to do things, And yeah, that's how it's going so far.
All right, great. So you had both of those going on at once. So you probably weren't getting a whole lot of sleep.
Yeah.
And then once you migrated to Canada, you're in the Toronto area, right?
Yes, I am.
You then time difference didn't work in your favor, so you had to hire some employees. So you actually have employees that are remote that live in India that you trained. And what are the jobs that they're doing? Describe the jobs. Are they mainly on the operations side, finding trucks and dispatching and doing that, or are they mainly on the sales side?
They're mainly on the operations side. They deal with the carriers and finding trucks and everything, because as I told you, I deal with power only. So truck is something we find for our trailers, being trailer as our commodity. So that's my niche.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. That was going to be my next question. So your niche is power only, right? So power
Yes.
only. For people that don't understand that, can you describe that for them? Because we have a lot of new people and even people that have experience that have never heard of that niche. Talk to us a little bit about your niche.
Yeah, sure. So power only is that we deal with trailers. Our commodity itself is trailer. So we have customers who are either manufacturers, dealers, or just any other person who has trailers, and they need it to be moved from point A to B. Maybe they're sending it to their customers, or they maybe need these trailers to be sent to some of their other facilities, or maybe they're just dealers who need all these trailers going to their different locations to be sold. So all those kind of people, the customers that we deal with, and so that is basically our commodity. And uh, yeah,
Yeah, that
that's
makes sense.
maybe
That
the
makes sense. So
explanation.
anybody who needs to move a trailer from point A to
Yeah,
point B, you provide the power, you provide the tractor, not the trailer.
right,
Right?
right,
Okay, cool. All right. So
exactly.
yeah, that's an interesting niche. So how did you come upon that niche? Why did you decide on that niche? What was your process? What was your thought process there?
Okay, so it again goes back to my cold calling job that I was working with. So they were having some different niches when they were, and the list that I was working on was a power only niche,
Ah,
power
gotcha.
only, and so it's just that I felt comfortable doing that, as I
Yeah, it makes
knew.
sense. You had some familiarity with it, right? You had some
Yeah,
familiarity from a previous job, which is
yeah,
no different than somebody else who maybe used to work in the steel industry and now they're going to focus on the steel niche, or used to work in the produce industry. They're going to focus on the produce niche, or the oil and gas industry, vice versa. I mean, it's all the same, right? You use something that was familiar to you that you had a little bit of experience with, and then you dove in and you expanded on it. No, I love that. I think that's a very simple approach. I mean, it doesn't always have to be super complicated, right? Figuring out your niche.
right.
Sometimes it's the least common denominator. Okay. So I think that makes sense. So I love the fact that you're very niched down, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your first, how long did it take you to move your first load? I know you did $630 in profit your first month, but how long did it take you to move your first load? A week or two or three? How long did it take you before you think roughly did you move your first load?
I think it was around 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
About,
Okay, cool. All
about
right,
two
great.
weeks, yeah.
And talk to us about that customer experience. How did that happen? Was it somebody that you had talked to in the past? Was it a cold call? Did you use LinkedIn? Did you meet them face to face? I mean, what was that experience like?
Okay, so first of all, when I started, I was really reluctant to do the cold calls all over again, because that's the only way I knew how it
Right.
could be done, how I could get customers. But anyways, I started Googling for different manufacturers and dealers who deal with my niche, and I came across a few websites, and I got a few emails, and I sent them a few emails. And maybe it was one of the days that I got a response with a list of units or trailers they have that needs to be moved, and I was like, okay, this that there here it is. We already have
Right.
a customer. I guess I have a customer already, and we have no contact, and I haven't contacted him or anything. I just sent like a bunch of emails, like bulk emails to
Mm-hmm.
different prospects, and and they just responded with a list of, okay, here is what we have. If you could help, we could work something out. And I started working on that list, and I believe that was the second week when I ended up moving the first load.
So did you move the first load without ever having a conversation with the shipper, or did you actually have a conversation with them before?
I never had a conversation with them before and until I moved that trailer.
Gotcha. Okay. So they sent out a load list because they saw that you might be able to help them. And you then worked on that. We're fortunate enough. Now, how many loads did they send you? How many trailers or opportunities did they send you?
It was roughly maybe 10 to 15.
And out of that, you were able to move one load.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm talking about the first one.
Yes. Yeah. And then they continued to send you.
Then
lists,
eventually,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes that's the way it starts, right? He emailed a bunch of companies in his niche. A few of them responded. They gave him an opportunity. And then at that point, he capitalized on the opportunity. Now, what I don't want you guys to get stuck on is the fact that he did it all by email, because whether you do it by email or whether you do it by phone or whether you do it by face-to-face, it's the same thing. Okay. He started a conversation, right? And then at that point, when they gave him an opportunity, he capitalized on it, right? So not everybody's story of using load lists works that way, right? A lot of times shippers will send out load lists, and by the time you cover that load, and call them back or you email them back, the load's already covered, right? And so sometimes that will happen. And so it gets very frustrating. And ideally you probably don't operate that way now. You probably operate with your shippers where they give you dedicated freight. Is that one of the primary ways that you work? So you're not really working off of, they send you a list of 20 loads and then you just happen to cover one. You work on them all and hopefully cover one. It doesn't work that way anymore. Are you more dedicated? They say, oh, hey, we want you to move these 3 loads.
Okay. So right now I have pretty, let's say, a few good amount of customers that that give most of the businesses. So for some of them, it's like they send us a list, but it's an open list. But for some of them, they give us dedicated loads, and they expect us to move them within a given frame of time.
Which do you prefer, and which is more profitable?
It all depends on the lanes once again. If it's not a good lane, we can't really, it gets difficult to find a carrier locally who is willing to move it.
Right. Perfect. So, okay, great. So that describes a little bit about your first experience. So you were a little bit hesitant to do cold calling because of your past experience and the pain you kind of felt when you were working in Ukraine. And so you kind of went to cold email. And then now, are you doing the way you're getting customers now, new customers now? Are you still leading, kind of using cold email? Are you cold calling? Are you getting referrals? How are the new customers coming? Like the last customer that you got, that you moved loads for, how did that customer come about?
Okay, so the last one I would say was a referral, but I still do continue the cold calling. And after watching all those videos with the Freight Broker Bootcamp, I started getting with the LinkedIn and all those sort of approaches, which I didn't do before. But I think it's a great approach to have a soft touch with the prospects on LinkedIn, and to even cold call, but because it still works for some reason. For me, it still works. So although I don't like it, I hate it, but that's something I still think is a great approach. And I most of the customers I have been working with are through cold calls.
So here's what I want you guys to understand. Mohsen is on the whatever it takes plan. He doesn't enjoy cold calling. Very few people do.
Yeah.
Right. And so the point is, though, he's made the commitment to himself and to his business that it's worth the time and energy and the pain associated with the rejection you get, because the return can be significant. And so here's my question. Like you did $18,000 in profit in January. We just talked about that a minute ago. Out of that $18,000, how many customers does that different customers does that represent? roughly?
I would say 5 to 7.
Okay. So this is what I want you guys to hone in on. You can build a 6-figure income working from home as a full-time student from Canada by having 5 or 6 customers. Not 50, not 500, 5 or 6. So here's the cool part. If that's as far as Mohsin's goals go, is wanting to make a 6-figure income, make $18,000 a month, he probably doesn't have to do a ton more of cold calling. He probably doesn't have to go out and do a lot of prospecting, no matter what channel, because he's got an established customer base. Now, there's always going to be a certain amount of attrition, but I can assure you, I don't know Mohsin very well, but I can tell you, I bet he's not doing 100 cold calls a day. I bet that he's not doing 50 cold calls a day. I bet on most days he might do 10 or 20. Is that pretty accurate?
Absolutely. That is exact figure.
Yeah. And so I want you to, it's important that we tell this story, Mohsin, because a lot of people have a misconception that, they're going to be making 100 or 200 cold calls a day for the rest of their life. That's not the way it works. If you choose to do that up front, great. What you're going to do is you're going to be able to fold time. And what I mean by that is you're going to be able to compress your learning curve. You're going to be able to fill your funnel, and you're going to be able to create more opportunities. But that isn't for everybody, and that's okay. We've seen lots of students as well as non-students get customers through referrals, get customers face-to-face, get customers using LinkedIn, get customers cold calling and emailing, cold emailing. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. So I love the fact that you used email, but you've now realized that email's not the only way you can do it. You're using LinkedIn, you're using cold calling, you're using other channels and other strategies. So I love that. Congrats on that. So let me move into a question that I get a lot about, and maybe you could lend your experience to it. And that is this, markets go up and down, right? The truck to load ratio, sometimes rates are going up because there's less trucks than there are loads. Sometimes there's rates go down because there's more trucks than there is loads, right? So there's that supply and demand, and each market is different. How do you accurately and effectively provide freight quotes for your shippers? So what is the process for you? Because you obviously are, you're not always the cheapest. You're not always the most expensive, but you're providing a quote that creates enough value for the shipper and enough profit for you that it's worthwhile for both parties to engage. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. So let's say I also do some loads, for example, in terms of harvest.
Okay.
If we talk about that, I use the DAT tool to get an average. Mm-hmm. And I ask my employees to get in touch with the carriers who have trucks available in those lanes, and to get some sense of what rates are they looking for, and to get those numbers out. And then I go back to the customer and I quote for that particular lane. However, it's very different with the power only.
Okay, so talk to us about how you price the power only.
That's my main niche.
Yes.
So it's been pretty standard. We have a standard figure depending on some particular lanes, and depending, of course, on the distance that it is covering. If it is going to be a loadout or a towaway move, considering those factors, and depending, of course, on the weather conditions and the market conditions, there are some specific numbers that has been, for some reason, working out and throughout those years since I started, and it's still working.
So you do a per mile plus fuel rate then?
Yes.
So you have a per mile plus fuel rate based upon, the market that they're coming in and out of, right? So if it's hypothetically, if it was Buffalo to Atlanta, it would have probably a different rate than Boston to Chicago. Right. Okay, right. Good. So you have done enough research and spent enough time and done enough due diligence to understand what the per mile plus fuel rate is. And then you plug those matrix, you plug those rates into the miles and into the seasonality and the conditions that are going on. And that allows you to find a truck and still make a margin.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes our margins are, let's say, 20%. Sometimes it could be 70%.
Right. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're even lower, right? I mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
if you did 18,000 in profit off 123,000 in gross, that's probably about 15%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're in the same range of profit margin than most brokers. 15% is typically the norm, right? So I like that. All right, cool. So that's a little bit about that. So tell me one other question, and I think we're going to probably, where are we at in time here? And we're probably going to wrap it up here pretty shortly, but I want you guys to stick around because we are going to be doing live Q&A at the end. Okay. So stick around to the end. Mohsen and I are going to do some live Q&A, but I know he has a busy day ahead of him. I'm sure he has, his phone's probably ringing in the background. Fortunately, he's got a couple of employees that are helping him. So talk to us about what would be your best piece of advice to a new broker that is looking to get his or her first shipper. What would be your best piece of advice? If you could give them one piece of advice, if you had just hired them and you sat them down day one and you said, okay, this is the most important thing you need to understand, what would that be?
I would say it would be persistence and just not to give up or to lose hope. You have to be spontaneous. You have to, even if you hate that, even if you, let's say, hate cold calling, even if you hate searching through the emails and Google and LinkedIn, but it eventually would, you would eventually find that one person who would let you in and get you started, and other things would follow up on. Like with me, I hated cold calling. I didn't like it at all, but I still do it because I know it works for me. So persistence, of course, patience, and I would say connection and networking is all you need to get started, and not to give hope, of course, because a lot of people, I believe, would just give up because it's too much stress, and you get nervous about these cold calls, these rejections that you get, because of course 95% of the times those calls would be rejections. Those would be the results, but you don't need that 95%. You only need that 1% to let you in, and that's how you get started.
Yeah, I love that. So it's really more around mindset, right? What you notice, he didn't focus in on some specific script. He didn't focus in on some specific niche. He didn't focus in on some, how to do X, Y, Z. What he focused in on was your mindset, because that's really what it is, right? Going into this, and this is what I like. This is what I used to tell people when I would hire them. It was like this. Listen, I know you don't like the cold call. Nobody likes the cold call. But here's the thing. If I told you that you had to clean toilets every day for the next year for free, now let that sink in. You had to clean toilets every day for the next year for free with no pay. But after that year, you were financially free, you were making six figures, and you would never have to make another cold call again in your life. Would you do it? What's your answer, Mohsen, after having gone through your experience?
No.
Yeah. So you wouldn't trade that 1 year to go on for the rest of your life and never have to make another cold call?
I had a network issue. Could you come on that again?
So what I was saying was, would you, if you knew you had to spend a year, okay, of misery and pain, right? Mm-hmm. Which we relate back to cold calling, right? And I use the example of you had to clean toilets for a year, but after that year, mm-hmm. you never had to clean toilets, and you would be financially free for the rest of your life. You'd be making six figures for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Is that 1 year trade-off worth it for the rest of your life making six figures?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I can tell you. I'll cold call all day long and twice on Sundays till I'm blue in the face versus having to clean toilets. And I listen, there's people that clean toilets. There's nothing wrong with that. But the fact is, most of them probably wish they were doing something else. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it really comes back to that mindset, right? It really does come back to that mindset. So I'm glad that you focused in on that. All right, Mohsen. So let me ask you this. Is there any final words you want to share with the audience before we jump into Q&A?
I would say that all those people who are getting started, if it's going to be difficult, it's not going to be easy. You would be stressed at times. You would be feeling down at times, but it's all about, you have to be consistent. You have to not give up and just follow the process. just look for the videos and advices on Freight Broker Bootcamp, and it has helped me out a lot because I was just a cold caller for that company. I didn't know anything about how the whole system works, how to get carriers, how to post loads, where to all those lanes, how to quote. I had no idea whatsoever about it. I was just a usual cold caller. That was my job, just to sell the script. But I had this idea that, okay, this might be something I feel I might be interested in, and I got started. That way I came across Dennis videos of Dennis on YouTube, and I really liked his approach, and I ended up being a member with the Freight Broker Bootcamp. And it's really worth it if you are willing to stick to it.
Love it. Perfect. And listen, guys, for those of you that aren't aware, Mohsen went through my Freight Broker Bootcamp. My Freight Broker Bootcamp is something I've had for over a decade. We've trained over 10,000 students. We offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. If for any reason you're not happy, nobody else does that. Mohsen is a testament to that. Obviously, my course gave him a little bit of guidance and a little bit of confidence, but he did all the hard work, right? And you can tell why he's been successful. He's followed the plan, right? He became an agent. He niched down. He did his prospecting. He learned how to provide accurate freight quotes. When he ran into an obstacle time-wise, he hired a couple of employees to try to make sure he could cover the loads. So he's doing all the right things. And so I want to congratulate you, number one. Thank you, number two. And totally appreciate you being here. And I look forward, maybe we'll have you back on in another year with a quick update as to how everything's going in your business. So thank you so much. Now let's hold tight because we're going to do a quick giveaway. We'll give away a Freightpreneur t-shirt. These are always popular. We'll give away a Freightpreneur t-shirt. Then we're going to jump into Q&A. We're going to do a quick giveaway. Hold your questions. Do not give us your questions yet, because if you do, they're going to get lost. So anybody who wants a chance to win a Freightpreneur t-shirt, here's all you got to do. Pull out your smartphone. Okay. I don't care if you have an Android or Apple or whatever you got. Okay. And go to your favorite podcast app. If you're on Apple, go to Apple Podcast. Search for Freight Broker Bootcamp. You'll see my bald, shiny head and the logo. Okay. It's a free podcast. It costs you absolutely zero. I think we've got like 100 and almost 150 or 140 different free trainings on there. All you need to do, whether you're on Apple or Spotify or Google Podcast or wherever you're listening to your podcasts or your music, go and search for Freight Broker Bootcamp. All right. Subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe, rate, and review to the podcast. It'll take you 60 seconds. Come back into the comments wherever you're at, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then let me know that you subscribed, rated, reviewed on whatever platform, Apple or Spotify or Google or whatever podcast platform you subscribe, rated, reviewed, and then come back in, and that's what's going to enter you for a chance to win the Freightpreneur t-shirt. For those of you that can't read the rest of it, it says someone who solves problems you can't understand in ways you wait, what does it say? Someone who solves problems wait, what? I'm blowing my mind here. Someone who solves problems you don't know you have in ways you can't understand. It's probably the medication. Messing with my brain. But yeah, so I'm going to give away one of these Freightpreneur t-shirts. You have to be in the US because I don't ship these overseas. So The only exception I might make is to send one to Mohsen for taking his time out of his busy schedule.
I'll come to Buffalo.
No, I'll ship it to you. Hey, if you're ever in Buffalo, absolutely let me know. We'll grab a bite to eat
Sure.
and sit down and talk a little bit about how the business is going. So we've got a bunch of people that have subscribed, rated, and reviewed. I'm going to select one of those persons. Now, you have to subscribe, rate, and review, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, or whatever. We're going to give a free t-shirt away. Then we're going to go into Q&A, but hold your questions, okay? I'm going to grab a drink because my voice sounds even more froggy and hoarse than it did when I got started. So hopefully that by next week, that's all gone. That's a thing of the past. So you got about 1 minute. Go to your favorite podcast app. I love Apple Podcast. Search for Freight Broker Bootcamp. It's a free podcast. We've been ranked in the top 100 out of all entrepreneur podcasts on Apple, which is crazy. Huge thanks to everybody who's already subscribed and is a listener. Subscribe, rate, and review to the podcast. Come back in. Let me know that you did that. And I will select one winner. And then we're going to jump into Q&A, okay? And then we're going to try to do the Q&A as quickly as possible because I know Mohsen has work to do, as do I, and as do you, all of you listening. You've got some work to do. All right, cool. So here we go. We're going to 30 more seconds, and then we're going to do the giveaway. Okay. All right, so I'm going to randomly pick one winner. And the winner is Maria McCarthy. Subscribe, rated, reviewed on Apple. I love it. Maria followed the instructions perfectly. Thank you so much. Maria, you are the winner of the Freightpreneur t-shirt. Here's all you got to do to claim your prize. Go to my Freight Broker Bootcamp Facebook page. So go on Facebook, search Freight Broker Bootcamp. You'll find the page. Like the page, and then message me your full name, your mailing address, your size, and that you won the podcast subscribe t-shirt giveaway. Okay? Let me know that you won the podcast subscribe t-shirt giveaway, your full name, your address, and your size. It's unisex sizing, so size accordingly. And I will ship that out to you. You'll get it within about a week or two. Make sure you do that today, and we'll process that this week. Thank you so much for everybody playing along. Now, if you guys have questions for me or Mohsen, what I want you to do is address who do you want to answer the question or both, okay? Hit us up with your question. Let us know who you want to answer the question, who you're directing the question to, and we'll go from there. All right, so let's click on this one. John says, I have loads of engine oil. Shippers are requiring me to have contingent cargo insurance. I've tried with a couple of insurance companies. They turned me down. They said that the engine oil is considered hazardous, but engine oil is not. Can someone recommend me a contingent cargo company? Okay, well, engine oil is, I believe engine oil would be considered hazardous because if it poured into it's similar to like gasoline, right? I'm not an expert in hazmat, okay? But I'm not surprised that the contingent cargo policies are turning you down. I don't have a specific one in the top of my head you've probably went to the most common ones or the most well-known ones. If anybody in the community can help, if anybody that's on here live or catching this on replay can help, message John here in the thread and see if we can help him out. Mohsen, do you have any feedback? I mean, I know you don't do hazmat, so probably not.
No, I think contingent cargo is something for brokers that they need to have since I'm an agent. So it's not something I have to worry about.
Yes, that's something
as
you
an
worry
agent.
about. Yes, exactly. Got it. Okay, cool. Yes, Truck Stop does sell it. Okay, who else has questions? Hit me up in the comments with your questions, and we will do our best to try to answer them, whether they're for Mohsen or for myself or both. Let us know questions you guys have. This is really odd because normally we're getting killed with questions. I normally have, okay, here they come. All right, coming up. Okay, so here's one from Nick Spears. Coming up on my first anniversary on 3/1, but I've been in a slump lately with getting new customers. Any advice to both of you? Mohsen, go ahead. You gave a little bit of advice already, but if you have some specific for Nick, I'm sure he'd appreciate it.
From what I have experienced and learned following Dennis, I would say you have to really explore your niche or niche and just stick to it. For me, I already have a niche and I'm working on that. I would say just follow that niche, ask for referrals, because sometimes you don't know that the customers you are serving, they might have some referrals for you. Sometimes all you have to do is ask them. You might get, some prospects or customers out of them, the customers you are serving already. And of course, you have to keep looking and keep digging in for new prospects.
So I think that's good advice. And here's what I would add to it. If I had an opportunity, I would ask you a bunch of questions before I would give you advice, because I have a very basic understanding of what your needs are, right? But what I want you to do is ask yourself these questions, and ask the questions: where is the sales process breaking down? Is it breaking down on the cold call? Is it breaking down on the follow-up? Is it breaking down because your rates are always too high? Is it breaking down because customers are giving you opportunities and you're not able to cover the loads? Where is the sales process breaking down? I want you to identify that. I want you to go back through the last 10 or 20 opportunities you've had, or the last 10 or 20 conversations you've had. And I want you to break down and understand and find out, where is the process breaking? If it's breaking on the cold call and nobody's giving you the time of day and you can't get to developing rapport and you're not getting to do freight quotes, then you need to work on your sales hook. You need to work on the questions you're asking, and you need to work on rapport building skills. Okay. So that's, if it's breaking down early, those are the things you need to do. If you're okay with getting their attention and building rapport, but then the rates are the problem, you're consistently getting customers saying, hey, your rates are too high, your rates are too high, your rates are too high, then you need to dig in and better understand your rates. Because here's the thing, your customers are working with brokers, and those brokers are making money. Otherwise, they're not working with that customer. Okay. So if there's another broker who's covering these loads, then you should be able to cover these loads and make money. You need to find out why your pricing is off, how far your pricing is off, what adjustments you need to make there, right? So that would where you would identify that, if that was the problem. If the problem is follow-up, you're doing all these freight quotes and nobody's ever getting back to you with load opportunities, you need to identify what's the reason why. Is it because your rates are too high? It's because you're out of sight, out of mind? Is it because they don't trust you? What's the issue? So if we were sitting down and in a consultation, those are the types of questions I would ask you. I can't ask you those today because we can't go back and forth, but you need to ask yourself those questions. So I hope that helps. I hope that lends a little bit different perspective and a little bit different color to Mohsen's answer. So I hope that helps. Okay, so Mohsen, this question is for you. It's one of our longtime, very faithful listeners. Ozan, what is the best approach on LinkedIn for new prospects for you? How do you use LinkedIn to get customers? Talk to us a little bit about maybe the ways that you've been able to do that effectively.
Okay, so the way I have started using LinkedIn is I try to see people who are within the logistics and who might be responsible with those positions that we need to get in touch with. And I try to see what connections they have, because a lot of times they have connections with people who have same responsibilities or positions in different companies. So that is how I have started to explore this. However, I would say I'm still new to the LinkedIn approach, but this is how I'm working on that for now.
So you're doing a search on LinkedIn for people that are in your niche and are responsible for the logistics and transportation and freight. And at that point, you're reaching out and connecting with them, and then you're looking at people that they're connected with and possibly connecting with them. And then that's kind of the first initial approach, is just finding and connecting with them. That's what you really have done up to this point, but you haven't really converted that into a lot of customers, but you're now converting that into conversations and relationships.
Yeah, not yet. I would say I haven't really had a lot of progress or success in that yet,
Hmm.
because I just started developing that and working on the LinkedIn approach for
Good.
now.
Okay, good. So that's part one. And Ozan, my take on it. Ozan was part of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. And this is probably a good time to talk about that for a second. My Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program is is a 5-week coaching program where I take that piece of my brain and I transplant it into your head, everything about freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, and my entire system. And it's a coaching program. And I'm going to be opening enrollment very soon. Okay. And when I say very soon, realistically, in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So you need to get on the wait list. If you're not on the wait list, there's less than 0% chance you're going to be able to be a part of the program, because it sells out every single time I open it. I put 100 people in that program and it sells out every single time. So if you want to get on the wait list, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/wait list. You'll get it when we open it. You'll get a text with a link with all the details, everything that's included, the pricing, when it starts, all of that, and you'll be able to enroll or not enroll. It costs you nothing to be a part of the wait list. The program is not free. The price is going to go up this time. I've been saying it for a year and I haven't raised the prices. The prices are going to go up, but I promise you'll get a 10x or more return on your investment if you follow the system. Okay. So if you want to get on the wait list, check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Ozan, I mentioned Ozan because he was a part of that program. And as a part of that program, the last time, I don't know if I'm doing it this time, but the last time I included my no cold calling for freight brokers system, which is my LinkedIn and social selling system. And so, that was a part of the program. And so Ozan already knows my 2 cents on that. He's got the entire program already. So check that out. Let's jump back into some questions. Okay, so here's a question. What's the difference between an agent and a broker? All right, so it's a good question. And I'm glad you asked it. Please don't be embarrassed to ask these types of questions. They're very simple, but the fact is everybody's at a different starting point, and I'm okay with this. A broker is someone who's licensed in the United States, we're going to say, okay, is someone who's licensed by the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, as a freight broker. So they go through a licensing process. There's no exam, there's no certification, there's no test, but they do have to go through an application process, and there's some check boxes they have to meet, and then they get their freight broker authority, otherwise known as a freight broker license. So they are a licensed entity by the FMCSA to broker loads legally. All right. Now, they work directly with shippers, right? Their customers are shippers, and then they use motor carriers as a way to actually move the freight from point A to point B. And the difference they make is the profit. So if they charge a shipper $1,000 and they pay a carrier $850, they would make $150 in profit. That's what a broker is. Now, a freight agent is typically an independent contractor that works under the authority of an established and licensed freight broker. So it's an independent contractor type partnership where they work on a revenue share. You heard Mohsen say he gets 70% of the profit. So in that scenario, we'll do it just for easy math. If the shipper was going to pay $1,000 and he's going to pay the carrier $800, there's $200 in profit. Mohsen would make, on his 70%, would make $140 commission on that one load. So you can see, if you move 3 loads a day, 5 loads a day, 10 loads a day, all of a sudden it can get very, very profitable, right? And so an agent is someone who works under a licensed freight broker. I hope that makes sense, right? But they're independent contractors typically, and they work on a revenue share. The agents then go out and get their own shippers, move their own loads, manage their own freight. So they deal with their customer needs, and the broker operates the authority, the insurance, the technology, the billing, the payables, all of that. So the broker does the back office, the back end, and the agent does the front end. That's kind of the best way to describe it. Anything you want to add to that, Mohsen?
Yeah, well, for someone with that question, I would believe someone it's really new and has not much idea of how it works. So starting off as a freight agent is the easiest and the cheapest way. You don't really need to have anything other than an internet connection and a laptop or a computer to get started with. Yeah, it's a great way to start up as an agent, and then yeah, if you would like to turn that into brokerage in future, of course, why not?
Yeah. A brokerage, if you start a brokerage, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars because you have to have a freight broker authority. You got to get a bond. You're going to have to incorporate. There's some steps you have to go through. It's not a lot. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars, maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 max, right, to get started. As an agent, you're talking about hundreds of dollars, right? You need a printer. If you've probably already got a computer, you need a cell phone, which you probably already have, and maybe a little bit of training. Freight Broker Bootcamp, you can literally go through the entire training, a one-time cost, $185, right? For a gold membership. That gives you a year-long membership for access to all the training and all the support, right? So you're talking hundreds of dollars to get started as an agent versus thousands of dollars as a broker. So it's way less cost, way less risk, and the job is much easier because you're only handling one side of the equation. You're not handling all the back office. Okay, so that's a really good point. Okay, question from Just Truckin'. I don't got $18,000 booked in January. How many loads were in the US? Okay, so for you did $18,000 in gross profit in January. About how many loads was that roughly? Do you know?
Roughly, I guess between 90 or 100 loads.
So let's say it was roughly 100 loads. Okay. How many of those loads were exclusively in the US, US to US?
All the loads are in the US.
Loads. So you're in Canada, and
Yeah.
all of those loads you did with your customers are in the US.
Yes.
So there's no Canadian customers. No. It's all US-based customers.
Yes.
Yeah, good. It's not uncommon, right? Well, the fact is there's freight that moves in Canada, and you may eventually move freight in Canada, but the fact is there's way more freight in the US than there is in Canada. It's just because of our population, right? I mean, our population is, I don't know, what is it, 10 times what Canada's is? I mean, I don't know how many people are in Canada, but it's not anywhere near what the US is. So, that population demands more consumption and more everything, right? And products need to move. So that's not uncommon. So good question. Thank you. Okay, so here's a question from Mudasir. I understand that we need an MC number, a US DOT number for US. Well, what about the same for Canada? What is required? Canada doesn't recognize brokers. Okay, so if you were moving freight in Canada as a freight agent under the brokerage that you work for a US brokerage?
Or I work for a US brokerage, yeah.
Work for a US brokerage. So does your US brokerage allow you to move loads in Canada?
Yes.
Okay. So are there any, to your knowledge with your company, is there any special requirements you have to have in Canada to move loads?
No, I haven't heard of any. And I have moved some cross-country loads, let's say from Canada to States or States to Canada.
Yeah.
And we do not have anything that we need in specific other than some paperwork that you need to get for the customs.
Yes, exactly. Customs clearance. That's where. Yeah. And the brokers typically don't even do the customs. They just refer the carriers to a customs, at the port of entry, wherever that is, right? Wherever they're crossing the border, that's where they're going to refer. The shipper is going to determine who does their customs, right? They're just going to tell the carrier to go talk to this customs brokerage. So yeah, so that makes sense. Okay. So here's one from Lato. Dennis, is a jack of all trades who's a master of none better than a master of one? Listen, my position because you already answered you asked the question. I believe jack of all trades as a startup brokerage is not the way to be successful. Meaning trying to focus on too many niches at the same time when you first start is not the best way to start. This is my opinion. It's subjective. Okay. I think Mohsen would agree because that's what he did and he's seen a lot of success. But there are other people who haven't followed that and who have been successful. But I would tell you there's a lot more failures in that way of doing it than there are success stories in niching down. So here's what I want you to understand. Just because Mohsen started with the power only niche doesn't mean he can't expand beyond that niche. But he will do it strategically. He will do it with a thought process. He won't randomly just go out and pick a niche and hope that he's going to be able to move loads in it today, right? I explained to you how I expanded my niche. I started with van only, Northeast outbound. It had to go west or south out of the Northeast in the US, like New York, PA, New Jersey, up through New England, and it had to go west or south. I expanded that niche from vans, and then I went into refrigerated, and then I went into flatbed, but it covered the same geography. And then eventually one of our customers in the Southeast asked them to help. They had a location in the Northeast. They needed help in the Southeast. So what did we do? We started working out of that plant in the Southeast, and then we expanded into that niche. And that's how we expanded from van only Northeast into basically almost every niche over time. Now I had the agent business model. So we had agents, most agents specialized in a niche, the steel niche or the oil and gas industry or auto hauling or, some specific geography or specific type of equipment. And, we had 80, by the time I sold the company back years ago now in 2016, we had 80 offices throughout the US. So we had pretty much every niche covered, but our company covered them all, but our offices were niche specific. So I'm a big believer in niches. You will hear some other people tell you that you should not niche down. Do not niche down because you're going to decrease the opportunity that you're going to be able to get loads. And that's bullshit to me. I think that's bullshit because you cannot serve too many masters at once. What you need to do is you need to become an expert and you need to become very focused on that one individual niche. I can tell you right now that after what's it been? A little over a year and a half, you've been in business?
Yeah, over 2 years. 2 years.
A couple years in business. After 2 years of moving power only, Mohsen now knows probably more than 98 or 99% of people in the industry because he's focused exclusively on that niche. He is now an expert in that niche. There's no way around it. He knows 10 times more than I know about that niche. I mean, he would talk circles around me when it comes to that niche. He knows all the nuances associated with that niche. So when he talks to a customer, he's speaking their language. He understands it. But if he had tried to focus on power only and van and flatbed and international and all these different niches at the same time, he probably wouldn't be an expert in anything. He'd probably be average at a bunch of things. And that's not my strategy. I believe that you should double down on the niche. Okay. So that's my 2 cents. Any comments on that, Mohsen?
Sure. Yeah. So when I started it in 2020, I used to watch your videos, and I remember this sentence you used to say: "Riches are in your niches."
That's right. Riches are in niches.
I wasn't sure why would you say that, or but eventually I realized as I spent some time into my niche that yes, that is how exactly it should be, because you can't really serve everyone because you might not know a lot of things that you need to know for a particular niche. And I stand by that, and today, and I approve of what your statement was. Is absolutely, it actually works.
Yeah. So don't take my word for it. I'm an old over the hill broker. Okay. I started my brokerage back in 2003 and I sold it, and I don't broker loads today. I'm very upfront about that. But Mohsen started with very little experience and didn't know how to start the business, and really wasn't, and took that niche, that riches are in niches approach. And look where he is now. A couple years later, making 6 figures from Canada, working from home while still being a full-time student, which I think you guys are still overlooking how ridiculously hard that is. So yeah, don't take my advice, take his, because he's actually, walking the walk. Okay. I can talk the talk right now. And that's what I did years ago. And I know it's the right way to go, but he followed it and it's working well for him. And I know he's going to expand out of that niche into other niches. I know it already. And he'll take the same sort of approach that he took in that first niche and he'll double down on that next niche. And then he'll expand and probably more than double his sales. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to wrap it up here in a minute. Maybe we'll grab one more question or two. Let's see. All right. So here's a question from Jose. If oil is new, it should be able to ship a commodity. If it's used, okay. So that's feedback for the other person's question. Okay. So, what happened to your book of business as an agent should you decide to become? Well, I think what they're saying is what would happen to your book of business as an agent if you chose to become a freight broker, right? If you chose to migrate your agency and go out and get your own freight broker authority, what would happen with your book of business? Did you sign a non-compete? Are you able to transition that book over into your own business later? How does that affect you?
I would take my shippers with me.
Yeah.
I'd be taking my customers.
I'll tell you everybody right now, if you are a freight agent, do not sign a non-compete. Do not sign anything that's going to prevent you in the future from potentially taking that book of business and starting your own brokerage or going to another brokerage as an agent. It's absolutely foolish if you tie your own hands because again, things can change within that company. They may be treating you very well. They may have a very good company. They may have a very good offering. Everything may start out great, but then all of a sudden they run into financial difficulties or they sell the company or you have a huge difference of opinion or they have technical issues or any number of issues that can happen in business. And all of a sudden it starts costing you money, okay, because you're missing opportunities. You are going to need the ability to pivot and go another direction. You may choose to work as a freight agent for another company who can support the needs that you have, or you may choose to go out and become your own broker. Either way, if you sign a non-compete or some sort of an NDA or some sort of a no-back solicitation or something like that, as an agent, it's going to become a legal battle. And the thing is if the broker's bigger, here's how legal battles work. As an agent, you're a small business. Okay. Let's say you're making six figures. Say you're making $100,000 a year profit. If this brokerage is making $1 million a year in profit because they've got a bigger business, you're making $100,000 in profit. Guess who's going to win the lawsuit? The guy who's willing to spend the more money. And the guy who's got $1 million is going to be willing to spend more money than the guy who's got 100. So it comes down to a legal battle that's going to get very expensive. Don't put yourself in that position. Okay. Smart brokers understand that if they don't keep you happy, if they don't service and support you, they should not be able to have handcuffs on you to prevent you from leaving. Okay. If you originated the customers yourself. Now, if you're working on their customers that they had established before you became an agent and they gave you those customers, well, then those customers should be off limits and you shouldn't be able to go after them because those are their customers, right? So it's a quid pro quo. So I hope that helps. All right, listen, that's going to wrap it up for today. I've taken up too much of your time already. Listen, I'm really excited for you. I'm ecstatic that you're able to just do the things that you're able to do being a full-time student and growing this business. And I don't know what to say. I mean, you're the only of your kind right now out there who's a full-time student who actually started his own agency and is now making six figures from home starting from India, going to Ukraine and now being in Canada. So that's quite the story. So, I think that anybody that looks at this is going to realize that it's inspiring and motivating. And I hope to see you again in the near future. Is there anything you want to add before we close out?
No, I would just hope that our community here and all our friends in the chat and the freight brokerage community, freight broker bootcamp community would seek to learn. And you have been an inspiration for me, Dennis. I would thank you to actually help me out for where I am. I'm really thankful for that, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here, I would say. I started with your YouTube videos, and those have been really helpful, and I would really look forward to see you sometime in Buffalo.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. It means a lot. It really does. Thank you so much. Listen, everybody, if you're curious about becoming a freight agent or a freight broker and you don't quite know where to go and you're looking for some direction, right? You're on YouTube, you're on Google, and you just can't piece it all together. Check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Trained over 10,000 students, had that training program for over a decade, and we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. I can't make it any easier than that. Check it out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next Monday, barring any health issues, with another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thank you so much for being here. Hold tight, Mohsen. I want to chat for a minute.
Sure.